Hey everyone, this is the follow-up video for my last video on the bill that was proposed to the Australian Parliament on the 20th. I'll be going over the changes to the bill that passed, as well as amending some sections of my first video. Once again, I am only covering the sections relating to the Nerf hobby space. While the other sections are important, I am a Nerf YouTuber that makes Nerf content, so I'm not the person to be covering those. Before we begin, I'm going to set some ground rules. The first video left my target audience, and too many people felt the need to share their off-topic and unhelpful opinions in the comment section, with many clearly not even watching the video. I do support free speech, but my comment section is not the place to be airing out your personal politics, conspiracy theories, and posting offensive statements and accusations towards other religions and cultures. Like I said, I'm a Nerf YouTuber who makes Nerf-related content, not a political channel. When this video goes live, I will have already turned off comments on the first video, and if the comment section in this video get filled with similar comments, I'll be forced to turn them off here too. Starting off, I'll be making some amendments to the first video based on the comments of some viewers. The first clarification I'd like to make is on how the changes the bill proposed would affect the Nerf hobby. A lot of people in the comments believe that the bill would make owning blasters illegal, or at the very least require some sort of license to own them. This is likely not the case, as the bill focused on making changes to the laws around importing blasters into the country, as well as adding a definition that covers the hobby-level blasters in the eyes of the law. Since the new laws primarily focus on the importation of these blasters, anything already in the country should be fine, and you probably won't need to surrender these blasters to the police like what happened with gel blasters in some states. The reason these new laws are concerning is because putting restraints into blaster importation will greatly impact the growth of the hobby in the country, as well as make it harder for new players to obtain hobby-level blasters. The new skirmish marker definition covering blasters also opens the door for potentially more restrictions in the future, but it could also be possible that it leads to restrictions around airsoft and gel ball lifting slightly, since they are no longer only covered by the heavily restricted imitation firearms classification. The second clarification comes from Anton on the Sydney Nerf Discord server. I put it in the pinned comment of the first video, but I'm adding it here for anyone who didn't see it. The bill is not updating the definition of paintball markers, and instead is adding a whole new term called skirmish markers, which does not include paintball. And Nerf blasters will not be affected by paintball laws, since those are governed by state law, while this is a federal bill. The new requirement for importing skirmish blasters is undergoing a police certification test for any that do not resemble the appearance of a fully automatic firearm or have a firearm accessory attached or integrated into it. Additional measures will impose serial numbers, identification, and safety testing requirements as per all other firearms imported into Australia. I'll be going over what this likely means later in the video. The last revision to the first video I would like to make comes from Knuckle, which is that the section defining a projectile toy is being added to the definition of a firearm, specifically to define what a firearm is not for importation purposes. If you are only looking at the proposed bill, it looks like the projectile toy definition is being added as a subclassification of a firearm. However, looking at the customs regulations document, it falls under the category of definitions that are not classified as a firearm. Basically, if an item being imported meets the definition of a projectile toy, it cannot be classified as an actual firearm. Once again, the actual implications of this will be discussed later. Those should be the only clarifications on the first video content, so now we can move on to the changes to the bill that actually passed in Parliament. Unfortunately, there was only one Nerf hobby-related change to the bill, which was the removal of Part 8, which focused on ammunition equipment. This is great, as it means there will be no change to how we can get tactical gear in Australia. The skirmish marker section remained unchanged and passed as is. So now that the bill has passed in Parliament, what actually happens now? The short answer is we don't know and just have to wait and see how these new laws get implemented and enforced. Since the bill's laws around the importation of skirmish markers are very open-ended, we won't know how they'll affect the hobby space until things start to actually happen. Even before the bill passed, there have been many cases over the years of blasters being stopped at customs, either being mistaken as imitation firearms, airsoft, or gel ball. Going off the clarifications made by Anton and Knuckle, the importation of standard Nerf X-shot, and dart zone blasters should remain unaffected as they fall under the classification of projectile toys instead of skirmish markers. The Pro lines are where things start to become questionable, as they likely won't be passing the Consumer Goods Projectile Toy Safety Standard 2020 tests required for that classification due to their FPS levels. Like Anton pointed out, items being imported that classify as skirmish markers could possibly require serial numbers, identification, and safety testing requirements, with the safety requirements being currently unknown to my knowledge. Since we don't know how these laws will be implemented yet, we don't know whether the Pro line blasters will actually require these, since they are marketed as toys and look unmistakable as toys, so they could pass the police tests as toys and not require serialization. The Worker, ZWQ, and other brand offerings, as well as completed 3D printed blasters, are most likely now under the skirmish marker classification. These can look more firearm-esque, especially in some of the colors they offer, and don't get sold commercially in consumer stores in other Western countries for the Australian police to cross-reference their testing with. They could end up requiring serial numbers akin to gel blasters in South Australia, however they should not require a firearms license like gel does there. Like I said before, we won't know how the new laws will affect blaster importation until we see their implementation. Once again, I would like to emphasize that the changes probably won't affect blasters already in the country. They should be safe from buybacks or confiscations if they're already in your possession and you aren't waving them around irresponsibly in public. But with how vague the laws are, it's best to err on the side of caution, since the bill calls for potential serialization of what they can classify as a skirmish marker. I'm sorry that everything is up for speculation, but that's all we can really do going off how unclear the bill is with everything. On the bright side, the laws around ammunition equipment remain clearly unchanged, with Part 8 being removed from the bill entirely. We will be able to continue importing tactical gear without restriction for competitive and LARPing uses. While ammunition equipment might not be seen as important to the hobby space by some people, the removal of the restrictions from the bill is still a very good thing, as the sheer vagueness of the classification could include official Nerf products or even Velcro strips like Anton pointed out to me. The less restrictions there are in spaces adjacent to the Nerf hobby will always be better than more. Well, that's all I have to cover for this video. It's a bit of a bummer outcome seeing the hobby space still being classified under these new laws, but there's potential that they don't affect anything in practice. I'd like to thank Knuckle for his clarifications, as well as Darren and especially Anton for helping look over this script and providing suggestions to make this video as informative and clear as possible. Now, this will be the last video I make on this topic unless something very big happens. Any updates or amendments I need to make will be done in a pinned comment. Like I touched on before, making and moderating the first video has been a very taxing experience, being a relatively small channel all of a sudden receiving a huge amount of engagement, with a lot of it being controversial or downright offensive. Once again, please keep the comment section civil this time, else I'll have to restrict them or turn them off entirely. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next, hopefully normal, video.